Buenos días, mi nombre es Javier Manterola.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Javier Manterola. First of all, let me apologize for not being with you at the Oporto symposium as originally planned. This is owing to some last-minute difficulties. It was therefore decided I should address you through this video recording instead. Today I will speak about 4 bridges. All 4 will also be presented by my colleagues during the conference. I will use these bridges to tackle the subject of design and construction of large bridges. There is no single way of designing a bridge. It is very difficult to establish this. The idea that there is a different bridge for each situation is not exactly true. It is not that there is one for each situation, rather there is a set of variables that have a bearing on the decision of which bridge to build in each case. The fact of the matter is there are several basic concepts that must be thoroughly developed in order to successfully address the design of a large bridge. First and foremost, we must have a solid knowledge of the resistant behavior of all different types of bridges. We must know how they work and what their suitability is for different span lengths. The same holds good for construction processes. We must be aware of the facilities they provide, since we are dealing with very long-span bridges. Apart from these 2 basic concepts, we must naturally be aware of the bridges built to date in similar situations. These will provide guidance as to what should and should not be done. Secondly, a certain amount of courage is required. We face bridges we have not built ever before. We cannot know all there is to be known in order to build the bridges with certainty, nor can we face it as a problem solved beforehand. Thirdly, and most importantly, we must have a formidable team of professionals capable of facing each and every problem certain to arise during the design and construction, and thus be able to successfully carry out the whole project.
Los 4 puentes que les voy a hablar, el primero es el puente sobre la Bay of Caddy. Es un puente muy largo, de más de 3.000 metros de longitud.
The first of the 4 bridges I'm going to talk about today is the bridge over the Bay of Caddy. This is a very long bridge. Its overall length exceeds 3,000 meters, as you can see in these aerial computer graphics. The Bay of Caddy itself is about 1,600 meters, or 1,700 wide. The remaining length completing the bridge from this pier here up to the left side end is situated on the Puerto Real side. This area is home to many factories. We had to gain as much height as possible here, since one of the main issues to be solved on this side was the largest possible vertical clearance in order to span a shipyard. We designed a 540-meter-long main span. This length was decided upon due to a prerequisite. The Bay Navigation Canal is 400 meters wide and 13 meters deep. However, the Port Authority required an enlargement of this clearance gauge. One of the bridge piers had to be placed as far as 70 meters into the quay, thus facilitating loading and unloading operations from the service cranes. On the other end, we also had to move the pier 70 meters further away. This is how we obtained a 540 meters long main span. My point here, as you can see, is that the main span length in this case was the consequence of a prior stipulation rather than a decision based on an in-depth study. The main problems we were up against were the following: how the 540-meter-long main span should be solved, what the approach viaduct spans on either end were to be like, and what shape to be given to the deck and the pier was. As for the distribution of the piers, which stands close together on either end, the solution we decided upon was a bit unorthodox. The main span is followed by a 200-meter-long span that can be seen from this pier up to this other one. Such a layout is not one very often used. In order to increase the stiffness of the cable staying system, the approach viaducts are usually extended to almost reach the pier. In that way, the deck achieves great stiffness. Therefore, when the traffic passes along the main span, these cables are much more effective. Nevertheless, we were not overly enthused with this aspect of the bridge, especially because of a part of it stands within the sea. The 200-long span is followed by a 120-meter-long ones, and after this we adopt a typical 25-meter span length for the approach viaducts. While it may be true that 75-long span is not the cheapest one there is, it is, however, economical enough, while at the same time working very well visually with a single central pier. This last element was very important in rendering the appearance of the oblique views of the bridge attractive. As for the cross-section, our hallmark of sorts is to use the same cross-section along the entire bridge. In this case, we used a very slender trapezoidal cross-section whose depth amounts to 3.50 meters in this 35-meter wide bridge. There are slight variations at central points due to the presence of the stay cables. As you can see, this is a composite cross-section made from steel and concrete at the top. On the Puerto Real side, the cross-section is the same, only here it is entirely made from concrete for cost-saving purposes. Otherwise, the shape of the cross-section is exactly the same. Here, in this part, you can see a third cross-section, which is due to a fact I have not stressed enough previously. We were obliged to hit a peculiar stretch of the Cadiz side. It was actually another requisite of the Port Authority. This is a 150-meter-long span that allows for the passage of vessels manufactured in the shipyard, requiring a vertical clearance greater than the 70 meters that the main bridge has above the navigation canal. We tried to keep the same cross-section in this 150-meter-long stretch. Nevertheless, given the fact that this span does not have the help of cable staying, what we decided was to lower the bottom part until obtaining a depth capable of spanning the length of 150 meters. This way, we obtained three cross-sections based on the same idea, while simultaneously complying perfectly with different requirements. In the approach area of the Cadiz side, the pier radial was carefully designed so that they both may have the same morphology. In this case, the pier is made up of two trapezoids joined by the wider base. Here you can see the area with a large group in the center. This is the narrower side. However, the length of the trapezoid might vary both on the upper side, where the supports are actually placed, and on the lower side. The diabolo-shaped cross-section, with the pier waist placed somewhat high up along the pier, has always appealed to us. We think it fits well with this kind of bridge. This is therefore the elementary cross-section of the bridge. This is a photo of the approach stretch on the Cadiz side. The slenderness of the bridge is readily noticed. This here is the version in concrete on the Puerto Real side with the same pier and the same deck. Even the main cable staying tower adopts the same shape, that of two trapezoids. Here is the one and here the other, which constitute the bottom part of the tower. As you can see, the tower splits to allow for the passage of the bridge deck. This problem raised quite a few doubts. A simple vertical pier would have been much easier to build than the tower that we eventually decided upon, since the latter is by no means easy to build. However, a vertical tower would have taken up 1,000 meters of the bridge and would have produced a loss of width on the order of 4 to 5 meters, which was too expensive. Another basic solution would have been to build two external piers on either side. Instead, and due to the fact that all the piers are aligned along the center axis on the entire bridge, we decided to split the tower, similar to the solution used long ago in the Cold Brand Bridge. In this case, the trapezoid splits in two and then climbs and closes up. The box accommodating the stay cable anchorages is placed here in the middle. Also, on the approach stretch on the Puerto Real side, we were required to leave the central area free to allow the passage of road traffic. We applied the same type of pier, split in two, made up of two trapezoids, with the deck passing through the upper side. This here is the box holding the stay cable anchorages, which runs along the pier. The stay cables extend on either side and are mutually balanced while transmitting the load to the concrete pier by means of these connectors here. The 150 long span I mentioned earlier, required by the shipbuilders to make possible the passage of exceptionally tall vessels if needed be, is demountable in this bridge. It can be seen how well it is conceived. Its purpose is to extend this cross-section by varying the depth until reaching the current situation that can be seen here. This photo shows the bridge at an advanced stage of construction. We can see the formed travelers and also how the metal structures have been welded.
The
second bridge I would like to present today is the bridge crossing the Danube connecting Romania and Bulgaria. This here is Bulgaria and this is Romania. The bridge overall span totals almost 1,600 meters. As you can see, at this spot in the Danube, there is an island that divides the river in two. The part on the right side is navigable. The tender specifications here require a minimum 150 long free span. This other side between Bulgaria and the island is non-navigable. As a matter of the fact, it dries out in summer, and there were no specific requirements for the bridge of this stretch. As we can see, this is a box girder bridge that also has a constant depth along the entire structure. The girder is 3.50 meters deep and has a transverse struts. The span length chosen is that of 180 meters in order to accommodate the pier protection while at the same time leaving the 150 clearance gauge. In order to span the 150, we cable stayed the deck using an extra dose design. The shape of the bridge is thus kept exactly the same in this entire length. The bridge was built using a precast concrete segments, installed applying the free cantilever method. Once the central body was built, we used a special trolley sliding across the deck to build the rest. This here is the completed approach span in the area of the 80-meter long span. Over the navigation canal, the bridge span is 180 long and has a 150-meter clearance gauge. We use the extra dose cable staying because this V here increases the deck stiffness. In this way, it is possible to allow the small oscillations in the stay cable's tensions, raising this even a little higher up. Here, you can see the installation process of the segments in this area. In the 90-meter area, we lifted only the central body of the box girder. However, in this other area here, we lifted the segments together with the struts and even with the upper slab. The third bridge I would like to show you is the bridge over the Tera River. My colleagues will also be presenting a paper on this bridge. In this case, the typical span we chose to apply was 75 meters long. this 75-meter span on the river crossing, becomes a 150-meter long one by means of the arch you can see in the middle. Although the semi-arches resemble struts, they actually do have a slight curvature in order to meet the self-weight bending moment, while at the same time taking into account the enormous load supported by the central part due to the deck weight. The piers on the approach span are 75 meters high. In this bridge, we followed the principle we had defined in the Cantilevered bridge. The construction procedure of this bridge is somehow special. The bridge is built by incremental launching. The construction begins here at the prefabrication yard. In the meantime, the arch is built by erecting the semi-arches vertically, after which they have gradually rotated. Meanwhile, the incremental launching advances at once. The two semi-arches meet at midspan. The bridge passes atop this point as if this were just another pier. We have used the procedure of semi-arch rotation in several cases, and we have always found it quite satisfactory. As a matter of fact, we believe that it has become increasingly suitable for all kinds of arch bridges, which is why we actually apply it to arches of up to 200 meters. The arch is made from steel and it's filled with concrete. The deck is a standard box girder. This photo shows the stage at which the deck has already passed atop the midspan. The small formworks have not yet been removed. Fourth and last bridge in today's presentation is the bridge over the Tagus River in the Alcántara Reservoir that continues to Portugal, where you know it as the Tejo River. The distance to be spanned amounts to 300 meters. For this purpose, we designed a 324-span arch. Here you can see the lower side of the bridge. This is a very long bridge. The construction solution using movable scaffolding truss is one we have studied thoroughly and applied repeatedly. The approach spans on either ends are 60 meters long. The deck over the arch is divided into 6 54-meter-long spans, and the last span has an intermediate value. This bridge does not entirely fulfill the condition I have mentioned before of having exactly the same deck along the entire structure, although it does come close to this idea. You can see how the arch helps the deck span the water. This bridge up here is not the one we are describing. This is another, pre-existing 260-meter span bridge, which in our view represents the ideal for bridges of this kind.
Y en este punto lo que pasa es que son de 40 metros y en esta zona de aquí sobre 6 puntos tiene los 240 metros que da la luz del puente.
This arch has a much more beautiful span radial and the bridge appears more tensioned. Truth be told, the smaller the span ratio, the more beautiful the bridge. The approach viaduct of our bridge is large. The pier height reaches 71 meters. This photo shows the beginning of the free cantilevered construction. This one here shows the construction one of the approach spans using a scaffolding truss on the left riverbank. Here you can see the free cantilevered construction of the arch bridge. A large piece of the arch is supported by stay cables that extend to the main pier on one side and towards the approach spans on the other. This photo shows the tower erected to help cables stay the central spans. This next photo shows an advanced stage of the free cantilevered construction, and we observe a great many stake cables installed and construction not only at this pier, but also at this other one here. Here the bridge is nearly completed and has almost all the stake cables tensioned. This bridge is scheduled to be joined at midspan by the end of the summer. The whole project is to be fully completed in autumn. These were therefore the bridges I wanted to present to you. My intention was also to briefly share with you how we came to design them. Each bridge has a story of its own, and this is a story that begins in our minds. The semi-arch rotation, incremental launching, and cantilevered construction are fields in which many of us have great expertise. My presentation concludes here. I hope you have found it useful. Thank you for your kind attention.